Imagine this. In the middle of the night, your door is being kicked down by an angry mob. They drag you out of your bed, still in your nightgown. When you ask what you've done, they give you a chilling answer. Witch? This isn't a scene from a horror movie. This is the very moment in history when the minds and consciences of humanity were paralyzed, costing the lives of tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of innocent people, as a plague swept across Europe for centuries. But how did an entire continent come to suspect its neighbors, healers, and even their own family members? How did a person's fate come to depend on whether a piece of wood floated in water or not? And most importantly, what were the real reasons behind these horrific accusations? Was it merely religious fanaticism, or were there far more worldly, far more sinister motives at play? Today, we open one of the darkest and most shameful pages in history. We will witness not only how this madness operated, but also how an innocent victim, the mayor of Bamberg, cried out for justice in a final, blood-chilling letter to his daughter. By the end of this journey, what you hear will make you question everything you thought you knew. How did it all begin? How was this collective madness ignited? The answer lies in understanding the mindset of people of that era. Plagues had buried millions, and those who survived lived in constant fear of God's wrath and the temptations of the devil. Natural disasters, famines, diseases, all of these were seen as the work of the devil's servants on earth, namely, witches. The people demanded an explanation, sought a scapegoat, and the authorities were more than willing to provide one. And there was a book that poured fuel on this fire. Malleus Maleficarum, or The Hammer of Witches. This book was essentially a witch-hunting manual, detailing step by step how witches could be identified, interrogated, and condemned. With the power of the printing press, it spread across Europe and sparked a witch-hunting pandemic. But behind this madness lay a cold, hard truth. Greed. The property of anyone accused of witchcraft was confiscated by the church and local lords. This turned witch hunting into a profitable enterprise. It was no longer only the poor and helpless who were targeted. Wealthy merchants, landowners, even mayors could become victims. The richer you were, the more convenient it was for someone to accuse you. Witch hunts, rather than being a quest for justice, became a form of plunder and inheritance theft. So, who were these people branded as witches? Don't immediately picture the classic movie image of old women with pointy hats and warty noses. The reality was far more complex and painful. Of course, elderly, poor women who lived alone and talked to themselves were the easiest targets. But the list didn't end there. Healers and midwives. The village wise woman who eased pain with medicinal herbs could be accused of murder if a patient died or a birth went wrong, instantly labeled as having killed with magic. Independent and strong women. Women who refused to bow to men and could read and write were seen as threats to the patriarchal order. Branding them as witches was a perfect way to seize their property and intimidate other women. Personal vendettas. This was the truly horrifying part. Did you covet a neighbor's field? Was there someone who owed you money? A woman who rejected you? All you had to do was start a rumor of witchcraft about her. Children. The most tragic aspect was the use of children both as victims and witnesses. It was believed that children would not lie. Thus, a child saying, "I saw my mother dancing with the devil at night," could be enough to seal a death sentence. Once you were accused, your innocence no longer mattered. The system was designed to prove you guilty, not to defend your innocence. How could you tell if someone was a witch? Witch hunters had what they believed were ingenious, yet in reality, inhumane methods. Now, I'll tell you about these so-called tests, and I guarantee your blood will run cold. The mark of the devil. Test. Inquisitors, along with people called prickers, would pierce the accused's entire body with long, sharp needles. If they found a spot that didn't feel pain, you were a witch. Water test. Ducking test. You would be thrown into water with your hands and feet bound. If you sank, you were innocent, but you drowned. If you floated, you were a witch and would be burned. Either way, the outcome was a death. Prayer test. Trembling with fear of death, you were expected to recite a sacred prayer without a single mistake. The slightest slip was considered proof of your guilt. Tear test. It was believed that a witch could never cry. The accused was asked to shed tears. If someone, tortured for days and psychologically broken, couldn't cry from shock, it was taken as evidence that their heart had been hardened by the devil. These tests were not justice. They were a theater performed in front of the public, with the outcome decided from the very beginning. Do you know what was the most important thing for the courts? A confession. And simply saying, "I am a witch," wasn't enough. They wanted the names of other witches. But who would confess to a crime they didn't commit in such detail? The answer is simple. Anyone subjected to tortures that pushed human endurance beyond its limits and challenged even the imagination. Torture chambers were filled with the most diabolical devices the human mind could invent. Their goal wasn't just to extract a confession. They wanted the names of other witches. A miserable victim under torture would list every name that came to mind to ease their pain. And thus, a single accusation could snowball into dozens or even hundreds of additional arrests. It was a self-perpetuating death machine. Now, I will take you to Bamberg, Germany, in the year 1628. The city was experiencing one of the bloodiest witch hunts in history, under the orders of Prince Bishop von Dornheim, known as the Witch Bishop. One of the victims of this hunt was the city's respected mayor, Johannes Junius. Junius was wealthy, powerful, and loved by everyone. But as I mentioned earlier, no one was safe in this hunt. He was arrested after being named under torture. For weeks, he shouted that he was innocent and resisted. But eventually, faced with unimaginable pain, he broke like everyone else. Shortly before his execution, he secretly wrote one of the most touching and horrifying letters in history to his daughter Veronica. I will now share some excerpts from that letter. In these lines, written as if in his own blood, Junius said, "My dear daughter Veronica, this letter is to tell you of my innocence. When I was thrown into prison, I said 100,000 times that I was innocent. But they brought me before the executioner. The executioner said, 'Sir, I beg you, confess something. There are tortures you cannot endure.' And I said, 'If I must say something, I am not a witch. But if you insist on a name, no one comes to mind.' Then they stretched me. They tied my hands behind me and pulled me to the ceiling. I thought my body would be torn apart. At that moment I thought, if you cannot endure a second of this pain, why endure an hour? God has forsaken me. They asked me who else I had seen. In pain, I gave names at random. I named my neighbors. Woe is me. They are innocent like me. My daughter, never show this letter to anyone, or they will take you too. This letter is proof of my innocence. For God's sake, keep this letter secret. Good night, for your father will see no more daylight." Shortly after writing this letter, Johannes Junius was burned at the stake for the confessions he had made. The letter has survived as an immortal testament to his innocence and the cruelty of that time. So, how did this madness, which lasted for centuries, finally come to an end? The sacrifice of respected individuals like Junius gradually aroused doubt in some circles. Influenced by the Enlightenment, some sensible judges, doctors, and thinkers began questioning the system. They loudly pointed out that confessions obtained under torture were unreliable, and that the so-called tests were utter nonsense. Legal systems evolved, the principle of concrete evidence gained importance, and trials based on speculation were slowly abandoned. But when this fire was extinguished, it left behind the ashes of tens of thousands of innocent people and an unhealed deep wound in the conscience of Europe. Looking back today, the witch hunts reveal to us the darkest aspects of humanity. How dangerous ignorance fed by fear can be. How the search for a scapegoat can turn into collective hysteria. And how justice can become a monster without reason and compassion. Johannes Junius's letter, Beyond Statistics and History Books, exposes the human face of this tragedy. He was not just a number, he was a father, a husband, a leader. And there were tens of thousands like him. These events painfully remind us of the immense value of questioning, knowledge, and, most importantly, respect for human life. For if history has taught us anything, it is this: extinguishing the fire ignited by ignorance is far harder than starting it. Thank you for accompanying me on this dark journey through history. If you enjoy this kind of content and want us to uncover the forgotten secrets of history together, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video, and take care.